When I was a child, I was so incredibly shy. I absolutely hated being thrust in front of people. I don't know in your church if you had these, but in mine, as I was growing up, we had these Children's Day programs where we had to go and do something up on the stage, up on the platform in front of the whole church. And um, I remember squirming to get to the back so I couldn't be seen or heard. One incident really stands out to me. I was in elementary school, and I still remember this. This is how traumatic it was. I was supposed to go up, not me, but there was a whole bunch of kids my age. We were supposed to walk up to the pulpit, read something or say something. And I got there and stammered and burst into tears and I ran down off and I buried myself in my mother's arms. I was petrified. I know, it's true. You're sitting there thinking to yourself, nah, that's not you. Nah, I don't see that about you. But it is. I didn't like all the attention. I still don't. In fact, when I first started preaching, I often fought back tears. Sometimes I even do this. I fought back tears when I first started preaching. It got to be like that. So that's kind of the reason why I got into radio. I got into radio because I could hide behind a microphone in a little broadcast booth. And I'll be honest, even these devotions, I'm hiding. I really am. I'm hiding behind this camera and this microphone here. There's nobody else in the room here, at least not that I know of. And I don't think the neighbors are listening. So it's just me, just you and me here. But even then, you're on the other side of all of this. And it's way hiding. It really is. These devotions are relatively safe. No one here is listening or watching as I film. So why do I share this? Excuse me. Why am I telling you this? Well, I'll let you know in just a moment. I'll be back in just a moment and we'll talk about this a little bit more. In the meantime, my name is Pastor Greg and you are watching Transforming the World. As the Lord was speaking to the prophet Zechariah, he said to the governor of Judah, he said the governor of Judah would be successful in rebuilding the temple. Nothing was going to stand in Zerubbabel's way. Zerubbabel, everything would be cleared for him so this temple could be rebuilt. However, the Lord also pointed out that the governor Zerubbabel would succeed not by force nor by strength, but by the Lord's Spirit. I'll read this, Zechariah 4:6. Not by might or by strength, but by the Spirit of the Lord. Our abilities and successes in ministry happen because of the Lord. And it is the humble servant who understands this. This is why I was able to learn, shortly after entering pastoral ministry, I hesitated to respond to God's call because I had known what sort of a person I was or am. And I knew that pastoral ministry would put me in a place that I didn't want to be, speaking in front of a group of people with no place to hide. They don't make a pulpit big enough, I guess. So I learned humility the hard way. Not that I was worthless and unqualified to speak on God's behalf, but that this is where he was sending me. And at that point, I needed to learn utter dependence on his strength and might, not on my own. Part of the problem that I struggled with was, as a child, and when I first started into pastoral ministry, I was leaning on my own strength. and my own skills and my own abilities, which is why, the nervous shakes, the nervous ticks, and fighting back tears, it's why it took place, because I was approaching it all on my own strength. Eventually, though, praise the Lord, I began to learn that I just needed to get out of the way and let God do the great things, because it's I'm not doing these things according to my own giftedness and wisdom and talents and skills, but it is God who is working through me to accomplish all these things. And I began to feel a little bit more at peace, that in spite of all my weaknesses and failures and shortcomings, it was God who was doing the work through me. Which is why I started with that little story about the kind of individual I used to be. In all honesty, if you've ever sat beneath some of my teachings, if you've ever heard me preach, and you say to yourself, when I talk about being shy, and you say to yourself, it's because you're not seeing Greg, you're seeing God at work through me. And I think it's important to understand this. So biblical humility is this. Biblical humility accepts God's view of our worth. Biblical humility understands that God transforms us to be servants. And biblical humility learns to depend on God's strength and not our own skills and abilities. So, do you notice the absence of self-deprecation here? You demonstrate biblical humility when you accept that you are valuable to God, believe that God has made you into a person of honor, and admit that God will do great things through you. Now, I'll be honest, that's not what comes to our mind when we think of humility, is it? When we think of humility, we're not thinking to ourselves that we have value. When you think of humility according to the world's standards, you don't think of yourself as a person of honor. And when the world talks about humility, the last thing that comes to your mind is that you ever do anything of value and worth. But biblical humility throws that completely out the window and says you are valuable to God. You can be humble according to the biblical standard and accept that you are a valuable person. You can be humble even though you accept that you are a person of honor, that God has done great things to you to prepare you to serve him somewhere in some way, shape, or form. That God has really taken your life and transformed you. You're not the old person you used to be. And you can accept that and still be humble. And great things can happen through you if you're willing. Not because of all of our gifts and talents, although God does use them, but because God is the one who is at work in us and through us. And this really turns the whole world concept of humility upside down. But as I want to explore tomorrow, that God has also placed a balance here in our lives. Biblical humility is one where we balance these things that I've just talked about against something else to keep us from becoming prideful and self-centered. We'll talk about that tomorrow and Friday. The other things that God has placed in us and around us, the other things that God has taught us to keep these first three things from leading us to an elevated sense of pride and self-worth. So we're going to talk again tomorrow about humility, looking at a counterpoint, if you will. In the meantime, I really appreciate you spending the time with me today. My name is Pastor Greg, and this is Transforming the World.